Have you ever heard of a city in America where a democratically elected government was overthrown by force? No, I'm not talking about some far-off land or a fictional movie plot. This happened right here, in Wilmington, North Carolina, in 1898. It's a chilling, true story that was buried for decades. A story of a thriving, integrated city and the violent coup that tore it apart. This is the story of the Wilmington coup, the only successful coup d'etat in United States history. To understand what happened, we need to rewind to the late 1800s. After the Civil War, during a period called Reconstruction, Black Americans gained political power for the first time. In Wilmington, this wasn't just a dream, it was a reality. By the 1890s, Wilmington was North Carolina's largest city and a beacon of progress. It was a majority Black city with a bustling Black middle class. There were Black doctors, lawyers, business owners, and politicians. They owned homes, ran successful businesses, and held public office. A Black-owned newspaper, the Daily Record, was one of the few Black daily papers in the entire country. The city's government was a fusion of two political parties: the Republicans, which included most of the Black voters, and the Populists, who were mostly white farmers. This biracial coalition, known as the Fusion Party, worked together. They were elected by the people, and they ran the city. Black men served as city aldermen, police officers, and magistrates. It was a rare example of political and economic integration in the post-Reconstruction South. Wilmington was, for a brief moment, a glimpse of what America could have been. But this progress was a direct threat to the white supremacist power structure of the time. The Democratic Party in North Carolina, which was dominated by white supremacists, was furious. They had lost control and were desperate to get it back. They couldn't win at the ballot box fairly, so they decided to take power by any means necessary. Their leader was a man named Furnifold Simmons, the chairman of the state's Democratic Party. Simmons and his allies, a group of wealthy and influential white men who called themselves the Secret Nine, hatched a sinister plan. Their strategy had two parts: a propaganda war and a campaign of terror. First, the propaganda. They used their control of the state's major newspapers to spread fear and lies. They ran vicious political cartoons and inflammatory articles, claiming that Black men were a threat to white women and that Black political power meant Negro domination. They portrayed the elected, fusionist government as corrupt and incompetent. Their goal was to incite racial hatred and justify the violence they were planning. One key moment in this propaganda war involved Alexander Manly, the editor of Wilmington's Black newspaper, the Daily Record. Manly wrote a brave editorial responding to a speech that promoted the lynching of Black men. He argued that relationships between Black men and white women were often consensual, challenging the racist myth of the Black male predator. The white supremacist press twisted his words, reprinting his editorial across the state and using it as proof of the dangers of Black empowerment. They called for Manly's head and made his newspaper a primary target. As the election of 1898 approached, the second part of their plan swung into action: terror. Groups of armed white men, known as red shirts, began to patrol the streets. They were essentially a paramilitary wing of the Democratic Party. They paraded through Black neighborhoods, brandishing weapons, threatening Black voters, and breaking up Republican meetings. Their message was clear: do not vote, or else. They wanted to intimidate Black citizens and their white allies into staying home on Election Day. On November 8, 1898, Election Day, the intimidation worked. Many Black and Republican voters were too scared to go to the polls. The red shirts patrolled polling places, and in many areas, they stuffed ballot boxes. Unsurprisingly, the white supremacist Democrats won the election in a landslide across the state. But their plan for Wilmington was far more extreme. Winning the election wasn't enough. They wanted to eliminate the city's Black leadership permanently. 2 days after the election, on November 10th, the coup began. A mob of over 2,000 armed white men, led by a former Confederate colonel named Alfred Moore Waddell, gathered in downtown Wilmington. Their first target was Alexander Manly's newspaper, the Daily Record. They marched to the building, broke down the doors, and burned it to the ground. The fire department, which was now under the control of the coup plotters, stood by and let it burn. But this was just the beginning. The mob then turned its rage on the city's Black population. They roamed the streets, shooting Black men on sight. It was a massacre. Black families hid in their homes, in swamps, anywhere they could find safety. The exact number of victims is unknown because the event was so brutally suppressed, but estimates range from 60 to as many as 300 people killed. It was a full-blown race riot, orchestrated and led by the city's white elite. While the massacre was happening in the streets, the political coup was also underway. Colonel Waddell and his men marched to City Hall. They held the Republican mayor and the biracial board of aldermen at gunpoint and forced them to resign. One by one, the legally elected officials stepped down. Waddell immediately declared himself the new mayor, and his committee appointed a new, all-white city council. The coup was complete. The democratic will of the people of Wilmington had been overthrown by a violent mob. In the aftermath, the terror continued. The new, illegitimate government began a campaign of banishment. They rounded up successful black leaders and their white allies, the very people who had built Wilmington into a thriving, integrated community. They forced them onto trains and banished them from the city, warning them never to return. Those who were banished lost everything: their homes, their businesses, their savings. Over 2,100 black citizens fled Wilmington in the weeks and months that followed. They left behind a city that was no longer safe for them. The thriving black middle class was shattered. The city transformed overnight from a majority black beacon of hope into a symbol of white supremacist violence. And what was the response from the rest of the country? Silence. President William McKinley knew what had happened. He received pleas for help, but he did nothing. The federal government refused to intervene. The story of the Wilmington coup was quickly buried. The perpetrators, the men who led the mob and murdered their fellow citizens, rewrote history. They called it a race riot started by black people, a necessary action to restore order. They became local heroes, their statues erected in the very city they had terrorized. For nearly a century, this was the official story. The truth was whispered in black families, but it was erased from public records and history books. It wasn't until the 1990s that historians and journalists began to uncover the real story, piecing together evidence from diaries, letters, and forgotten archives. In 2006, a state commission dropped a report that finally called it like it was: a coup d'état. The Wilmington coup of 1898 is a crucial, yet often forgotten, chapter in American history. It wasn't just a riot. It was an organized political insurrection that used violence to overthrow a government and establish a white supremacist regime. Its effects were devastating and long-lasting. It ushered in the Jim Crow era in North Carolina, a period of legal segregation and disenfranchisement that would last for decades. It sent a message across the South that violence was an acceptable tool to suppress black political and economic progress. Learning about this event is not about assigning blame or dwelling in the past. It's about understanding the fragility of democracy and the courage it takes to defend it. It reminds us that progress is not always a straight line, and that the fight for justice and equality is an ongoing struggle. The story of Wilmington in 1898 is a painful but necessary reminder of a time when American citizens overthrew their own government and got away with it. It's a history we cannot afford to forget. Thank you for watching. If you found this story important, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more hidden histories. Let us know in the comments what you think and what other historical events you'd like us to cover. See you next time.